Welcome to everybody online. Welcome to everybody in the room here. We're calling to order our June 12th Jeffco Airport Advisory Board meeting. We've got a lot of new members around the table here, so welcome to those. Let's kick off with our new member introductions from the board. I'll start and then we'll just kind of go this way and we'll end with Paul over here. I'm Jansen Tidmore. I kind of kid by default chair of this committee, and looking forward to one of you seven becoming that chair sometime soon. But work for the Jeffco EDC, that's the Economic Development Corporation that represents the county and the cities for job creation. And in my third year on the board here, love the asset that we have here in our airport. So,
I'm James Einoff. I'm the local resident member of the board.
I'm Jim Wood. This is my third minute on the board. So I've been one of the new appointees. I'm the president of the Experimental Aircraft Association, Chapter 43, which is based here in Broomfield. I've been a pilot flying out of this airport since 1977. I'm also attended here and have an airplane in one of our county hangars.
I'm John Marriott. I'm in my third year on the board. I think like Jansen, I am a local business owner in Wheat Ridge, and I also serve on the Arvada City Council. I'm in my 11th year of service on the Arvada City Council. I guess I fulfill the seat for a local elected official on this.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Camper. I retired about a year and a half ago from a 42-year career in law enforcement, and but I've also been flying out of here for about 40 years, and had to get a master's for my job, and was a lot more interested in flying than I was in police work. So I got it in from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and thought about going into airport management, but just decided not to do that. But it's a nice opportunity to serve. So, thanks.
Hello, I'm Dr. Barbara Adams, and I'm new to the board, and I'm part of Civil Air Patrol. We currently have 2 hangars here, and I've been flying since the 90s, I think, so quite a while. And I teach at DU still. I am retired in neuroscience, but I still teach at DU, a brain class, and this fall I'm starting a space class too. And I'm also a NASA JPL ambassador, so I give talks all over the state. And I'm just really glad to be here. I hope to make a lot of new friends, and let's go RMMA. Woohoo!
I'm Greg Boom. I've been flying out of here since 1982. I own Rocky Mountain Flight School, the flight school in the field here. I own the airplanes in the flight school. I own Mountain Air Aviation, which is a maintenance shop. I own Front Range Transponders, which is a repair station for giving transponder checks. And I'm glad to be here and enjoy the airport.
My name is Paul Hoisington. I've been on the board, I guess, one of the older people now for 6 months. I'm a resident just south of here and a member of the Beaumont Metropolitan District Board, the treasurer for them. I also work in finance and operations in a technology company. Yeah, I'm excited to help serve on the board.
well, speaking for the 4 of us that have been happy to get here to get quorum every single month, welcome. We're excited to have the table back full around here. We're also very excited, and joining us remotely, hopefully you all saw the announcement. We have named our new airport director after a nationwide search, lots of interviews, lots of conversations. Eric Dahl has been named and will be starting with us on June 16th. But Eric's been kind enough to join us virtually, and I'm gonna let Ben get him queued up and say a few words. Welcome, Eric.
Well, I guess I'm glad to be here tonight. Like you said, my name is Eric Dahl. I'm pleasure to be appointed here as airport director. I look forward to working with all of you, and certainly working with the community to address some of the community's concerns and certainly move the airport forward. They talked earlier about a master's degree from Embry-Riddle. I also have a master's from Embry-Riddle, so I can share in that celebration and that financial hardship. So it is something that we can share together. My master's is in global aviation logistics, and I do have my bachelor's in airport management from UND. So a lot of different aviation experience there, but I look forward to working with everybody and being part of the team.
Well, welcome. I speak for everyone. We can't wait to see you on the ground here, and I know it's coming in a couple of weeks. So excited to have you on the team.
I look forward to it.
All right, I'm going to move on to our public comments section. I'm going to start with ones online. Do you have any online comments?
Two. So the first will be Commissioner Kraft Tharp. I'm unmuting you.
I'm Tracy Kraft Tharp. I'm a county commissioner in District 1, which is the north area of the county. I just wanted to come on and say some welcomes. Welcome, Eric. We're really looking forward to working with you, and I hope that you rest up and enjoy yourself and have fun, because we got lots of good stuff for you to become involved with once you get into town. But I want to say a special thank you and welcome to our new board members. We're really thrilled that you all decided to help us in the direction of this airport, and really look forward to seeing this new board come together and do lots of great work. So just want to say welcome.
Thank you, Tracy.
I have one more. It's Randy Johnson. I'm unmuting you now.
All right, should be with us, Randy.
Yep. Okay. Hi, my name's Randy Johnson. I live in the town of Laverre, south of Chatfield, on the way to Castle Rock. And the reason I'm calling is I started calling into the roundtable meetings, which have been disbanded. And I've had, the Rocky Mountain airplanes have been recently, I'm going to say, I think within the last year, maybe two, flying down this way, going down to Pueblo and Colorado Springs and back. And I've been dealing with the airplanes from Centennial for years, so I'm very good at it. But what I want to mention is I write down the airplanes that are very noticeable flying over, and if they do maneuvers directly overhead, I try to ask not to, and I've submitted complaints. That's just a little history. Last month, I think I submitted 4. This I did 5. I do believe that they're addressed when I do it, because I see the planes. They try not to circle directly overhead. They're in the open space around. But what I just sort of wanted to introduce myself to this board. I do call into the Centennial Airport roundtables, or I go into those. I'm going to say I must be about 50 miles from you guys, which is a little bit more difficult. I actually worked in Gun Barrel, commuted up there for a while. And I do also go to the Centennial Airport Authority Board, gone to those too. So, but what I want to say is, I believe the airplanes have tried to spread out a little bit down here, so they're not just coming directly over. Because I know they were trying to, I think at one point, focus going down the highways, right? But they sort of spread out, so at least they're not all coming directly overhead. I want to thank you for that. I want to thank the pilots that try to avoid flying straight over and go over the open space around us. And I thought I had one more comment. Many planes are avoiding flying directly over. I want to thank you for that. I'll probably continue to call into your meetings just to understand, but I appreciate it that you guys listen to us and the communities and are trying to help us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Randy.
Yep.
We've got one that's signed up here, Brad.
Yes, sir.
How you doing?
Good.
Nice to see everyone. Brad Walker, Town of Superior. Wanted to make some comments. First, thanks to all the new board members. Your service is going to be is much appreciated. And I know it's not going to be necessarily easy going forward, but it is appreciated that you are doing your public duty and people do recognize that. I do want to call out, though, that the board previously lost several members as a result of undue political influence, and they resigned in mass. Hopefully, we can move beyond the hyper-political environment that has been created around this board as well as the airport, and we can get towards some positive change moving forward. The airport desperately needs less political influence and more guidance and leadership in moving forward, whether that's noise abatement or, protecting general aviation and the hangars here at the airport, or the capital construction projects that are undergoing. So hopefully, I just want to remind the board that we stay focused, try to keep the politics at a minimum, because this is technical. Your role is advisory, and welcome on board. Have a good day.
Thank you, Brad. I know sometimes this sheet can tuck away up there, so I will do an all call to the audience in case anyone else wanted to make some comments before we close this section.
I have one more in line.
I'm still gonna have a comment, time at the end.
Yes, if we see something, it's largely orientation, so there's nothing that we're really taking up for a vote. But if there's some comments, I'm open to that. There's not a whole lot of items for debate on today. It's more information.
We've been down this road, in the past, because you do it first. And it doesn't give anybody the opportunity to respond to what went on during the meeting. I think it always should be at the end. Comments section.
Perfect, noted. You said you got one more online?
One more. So Kirsten Preisinger, I am unmuting you.
All right, Kirsten, you're on with us. Go ahead.
I am just here as a local resident of the town of Superior, and we're always encouraged to keep it civil, and I certainly want to do that. I want to first acknowledge the fact that I've been a resident of the town of Superior for 30 years and have always, I used to enjoy the airport. I used to enjoy seeing the flight, the air shows and recognizing a few familiar planes and so forth. And about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, that all changed. And we're now, the residents are now dealing with a very extreme noise issue. And I just want to say, as someone who lives it on a day-to-day basis, that this has become unbearable. And I'm not rich. I own a townhome. I have a great interest rate. I've looked all over the state of Colorado to see where I might move. And that's just really not an option. And I would like to implore the airport and the new director, Mr. Dahl, to please explore the idea of eliminating touch and go operations. You would find that 95% of the complaints about the airport would disappear if touch and go operations were eliminated. And I'm not going to go into any kind of rant or anything. I just wanted to speak to you all directly and let you know from the heart that I raised my kids in this neighborhood. I want to stay. It's my home. It's not just something I can toss aside. And I hope you'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. All right, we're going to close the public comment section. We'll get to our first item of business, the approval of the minutes from our April 10th meeting. Hopefully everyone in here received a copy of that in their agenda. Let Ben pull it up.
Jansen, I'll start. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as submitted from the April meeting.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, or suggestions? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're moving into our business items. The first item we've got up is the airport orientation. Ben, I think I'm turning it over to you for this.
All right, so I guess the rest of the business items are being covered by myself today. One thing we talked about is just with the new board, let's kind of level set on a number of different things. The first will be just your role as an advisory board, so I'll go through that, but then we'll also go through kind of the airport's background and context. Some of us will be very refresher for some of you, so I apologize for that, but it's something that might not be, it might be new for some members, so we'll just go through it and make sure everyone's on the same page. So role of the advisory board, I don't know if you all read this before you apply to the committee, but just so you know, because sometimes I do get questions of like, what is my purpose on the board? And it's, you're not necessarily representing your appointed seat. You are representing yourself and bringing your guidance and input into how this airport is run. Your role is to serve as an advisory board to the Board of County Commissioners. And I want to make that point kind of strongly in that staff supports you all and gives you guidance and whatever information you guys request from us. But ultimately, you guys report to the Board of County Commissioners. So you guys can read the responsibilities and the establishment, but you know, it's what you would expect out of an airport advisory board in terms of what you'd be reviewing, master plans, major capital projects, design guidelines, and other committee efforts. Just some of the nitty gritty details on the board. We typically meet on average, I'd say once a month. Sometimes we skip a month or two throughout the year, so you could expect that. Typically, it's the second Wednesday of the month at 5 p.m. Your typical touch points with the board are two updates with the board, usually given by the chair and the vice chair. Our meetings are open to the public, as you can see, and we take minutes. And as I mentioned earlier, we serve as staff to you all. But ultimately, you guys are an advisory board to the commission. Any questions on the board at this time? You might have questions as we go through things.
And it's meant to be a Q&A, so stop it.
Yes,
and ask those points.
Yeah. All right, I will continue on. Also, Q&A, stop me at any time. But just some context, some of you guys, of course, will know this. But just in case, this airport was founded in 1960 and has been owned and operated by Jefferson County. We are currently the third busiest airport in Colorado. Technically, we're considered a general aviation reliever airport for Denver International. So that, you know, Denver International, it's not dealing with a lot of small aircraft that would be better sent to us or Centennial. We have over 400 base aircraft and approximately 50 businesses on the field, and some of the major tenants, you can see their logos up there. You may have heard of the CDOT economic impact study related to airports. This is currently being revised. Our last estimate was 730 million in economic contribution, but we'll see what the new study comes out with. In terms of staff, airport staff are Jefferson County employees. We're down a couple, but normally we're a full-time FTEs of 28. Once Eric starts next Monday, we'll be one more closer to that number. We're broken up into operations, airfield maintenance, fleet, and administration. I think one thing that's really cool is like when we hire a fleet mechanic, they also get airport rescue and firefighting certified. So I always joke, someone might be repairing something and then within 1 minute needs to be in a fire truck out to a plane crash. And that's a unique set of skills and job requirements to fill. And we have that staff here. So operations, airfield maintenance, and fleet provide that ARP support and are also critical for removing snow in the winter. And then administration manages airport finances, leases, and the planning and development of this airport. That's so you know who to go to. Airport facilities, we own a few buildings on this field, including this terminal, also 3 along Airport Way, along with about 120 T hangars. We also maintain and own a whole suite of equipment to take care of this airfield. And including in that, we've made significant investments in the past 5 years, snow clearing equipment to ensure we can keep our runways open throughout significant storms. One thing I like to touch on, because it's often a misunderstanding, is like, what is our role? What is Jefferson County's role, the airport's role, compared to what the FAA's role is? So Jefferson County is considered the airport sponsor. That's why I am a Jefferson County employee. And that's why all our business is conducted through them. That's why all of our leases are approved by the Board of County Commissioners. All of our grants are approved by the Board of County Commissioners. You all are an airport advisory board that reports to them, as I mentioned. And then the staff here, I kind of boil it down to, we're essentially property management. in airport operations and maintenance. And notice, in none of that did I say we tell airplanes where to fly, we control the aircraft in the skies, or anything like that. That is solely in the jurisdiction of the FAA. The quote there is from United States statute, but the FAA is in charge of air traffic control and airspace regulations, and they also are in charge of approving and funding airport grants that we and other airports receive. I'll touch on that more later. Always another kind of interesting data point here is our operational levels. And as we've heard through public comment, people are feeling the increase in operations lately. We are at our highest record levels of operations in 2023. It is interesting to note we were fairly busy back in the 1970s. And as many of you probably know, aviation is a cyclical industry. It depends on fuel prices, demand for pilots, a number of different economic factors. Sometimes people ask, were you really that busy in the 1970s? And I love this picture from the archives of our ramp in the early 1970s. And I think there are more aircraft crammed on our ramp then than there are today. Just to me goes to show that, this was the heyday of general aviation, and, it's a time when everyone was trying to get their pilot's license. And yeah, I think we were probably that busy back then. But it's not always a joy to be a busy airport. We know it's an impact on our surrounding neighborhoods, and we're doing what we can. One thing we can do, and we know we can do legally, is to request that pilots follow voluntary noise abatement procedures. So we communicate these out fairly frequently. So some of the pilots in the room hopefully recognize that sign, hopefully recognize those procedures. One interesting thing to note is there was a recent Colorado House bill that was passed that creates more conditions or requirements for what our voluntary noise abatement procedures look like. And we're waiting on further guidance from CDOT Aeronautics to help us revise our procedures. This will have to be done before we accept another state grant for infrastructure.
But before you go off that,
Sure.
I think it's great for those that are listening to some of the comments. This that we've got posted, can you maybe run through that sign and not real big detail, but what is this basically asking for our voluntary noise abatement of our pilots here at RMA?
Yeah, sure. And we worked with an airport noise task force to kind of revise these and make sure that they still make sense for the pilots and the flight schools on the field. But basically, I summarize it as fly as high as you can, as fast as you can to get further from residences. Hold throttle back so you're less noisy when you can. Fly a standard or higher glide path so you're not approaching at a very low altitude if you don't have to. And overfly major road corridors and open space when able. And this was a big talking point with the community noise roundtable about, can we encourage that more? It's a little interesting in that our area is actually blessed with a lot of open space, but there's also a lot of other factors that constrain where pilots can fly, to include the mountains, to include Denver's airspace. So there's some opportunities and there's certainly some constraints about what pilots can do there. And then the newest one we added was using 30 right and 12 left for night pattern operations. And I think we've had some good success there. And that was a logical suggestion. Thank you, Trustee Serbu, who's in the room here, because it results in fewer aircraft flying over the neighborhoods that are that would be using 30 left and 12 right. Obviously, this is when conditions allow. It's a summary. I wanted to go, before I got into kind of our current plans and studies, I just wanted to give a brief historical context. Maybe because I like history, but here's a picture of RMMA or Jeffco Airport at the time in the early 1960s. And you can see we actually had a master plan in 1959. And people who know this field well probably can see that a lot of what was recommended in that 1959 master plan ended up being built, generally that basic structure. The crosswind runway actually had not been built in this early 1960s picture, but was built shortly thereafter. And this airport's continued to do master planning and development kind of ever since. I think this 1988 master plan is really interesting. I guess I'm going to ask, does anyone see anything really interesting about this picture? Do they notice something?
Pond.
Where'd the lake go?
There's a lake that's gone.
The runway is never.
There is a third parallel runway recommended on this airport layout plan. That would be way off of Sim Street. Never been built. not at our current master plan. And you could see that and be like, oh, well, I guess we didn't follow our plan, but if you go and read the text of this plan, it talks about how important it is for our master plan to be flexible. Because back to aviation is very cyclical and it's very technology driven, and who knows what 20 years will look like. You know, so it says, yeah, here's some scenarios, but that doesn't mean this is what you're gonna build in the next 10 years. You need to be flexible and adjust. So coming up to present day, or close to present day, this is how I kind of break down the documents that drive how this airport plans and develops. And I'm just setting aside right now a different conversation that is airport operations driven and financial discussions, because those are topics perhaps for another time with a different person. But you got the planner, so I'm going to talk about plans. So our latest master plan was from 2011. The FAA recommends that that's updated approximately every 10 years, but it's not a mandate. Ours is getting a little long in the tooth, and we're looking to update that at some point. That airport master plan feeds into the airport improvement program. We also undertake other studies to help us grow and develop and understand our constraints. And then in terms of private development or development done by others, we're guided by an overall development plan. That's our zoning and a strategic business plan that this advisory board played a part in. So the airport master plan from 2011, I won't read all of these, but it basically, you know, it's like many plans done in communities. It identifies, you know, your existing infrastructure, what might growth look like over the next 20, 30 years, and what kind of infrastructure projects we should do to accommodate that. So that's what an airport master plan does. It also included an Environ's land use plan that talks about compatible land use off of the airport that would ensure, you know, better collaboration and fewer noise complaints. So this is the airport layout plan that we're currently under. And if you know our airport well, you can see there's a section in the northeast that was recommended for development, and it's largely taken off by the shelter fixed base operation. And so that, to me, essentially builds out the north side of this airport. We continue to get requests for hangar space and where they can develop. So our attention is now focused onto the south side of the airfield, which is also identified for development, both in the 2011 master plan, but also the 2000 master plan and previous master plans. And so that's kind of where our attention currently lies. Another very important part of airport planning and development is our airport improvement program. This is how we fund infrastructure on this airfield. We review this plan with CDOT Aeronautics and the FAA every year, sometime in the fall timeframe. So it's going to be about the time of year where we start thinking if we need to revise this for the next year. Airport improvement program projects typically include a 90% federal match, a 5% state match, and then we have to come up with 5% of the funds as an airport. So, like I just mentioned, we make adjustments due to demand constantly. You know, when we learned that taxiway Alpha was failing 3 or 4 years ago, that all of a sudden became escalated as the next important AIP project. We need to be flexible like that. But this is what it looks like right now. This doesn't include every CIP project we're looking at, but taxiway Otis and Delta, I'll talk about that in a future slide. We also have to do some drainage improvements. But then you can see we also have like an airport noise compatibility study, a seal coat. I will note the new terminal design is kind of an out-of-date project. This terminal is getting long in the tooth. In fact, if you were here 30 minutes before this meeting, you would have heard the roof raising up and down, banging onto the existing building. It's essentially raising off of, or it's loosening off of this building. So we know there's major investments to be done in this terminal, but we'll see when that actually happens and whether it's a capital project versus something we can undertake in smaller increments. Then we have another phase 2 of the taxiway Otis and Delta, and then there's question marks 26 and 27. I know this is a hot topic for some, but runway 321. This board talks about runway 321 and its condition and what its future might look like, and we'll get to that. Currently, we have a new master plan tagged for 2028. I know there's some interest in moving that forward. When we accept airport improvement program projects, this is important to know. We sign an agreement with the FAA. It's called the Federal Grant Assurances. And it's a whole suite of different assurances. If you Google FAA grant assurances, airport sponsor assurances, you'll get to the document. But two of the ones that drive us a lot is the economic non-discrimination, because it comes up frequently. Can you just stop the flight schools from operating? Or can you just stop such and such that I don't like from operating on your airport? And the answer is usually not. We can't unjustly discriminate. And then the other one that's important to know is maintaining a fee and rental structure that's as self-sustaining as possible. This gets to the uncomfortable conversation of rates, G-hanger rates, ground lease rates, all that sort of thing. So going back to that CIP project, this is the one that we're almost finished with design on, taxiway Delta and Otis, and this is what kind of unlocks that south development area. And this project was essentially held up by the relocation of Sim Street, which is being done by the Burb Metro District as part of the Burb Innovation Park. And since that, if you've been on the south side of the airport lately, that is underway and hopefully will be done this fall. It allows this AIP project to proceed. And so we're expecting to go out to bid for construction here in July. So you'll see the first dirt moving on that hopefully later this year. And then if you've taxied on taxiway Delta, part of this project is to start rehabbing that. And then the second phase will rehab a further segment of that. Another hot topic, as I mentioned, runway 321. We undertook a feasibility study last year, I believe the last 2 years, because we know the runway condition is almost failing. CDOT Aeronautics comes out and does a pavement condition rating index for us. They did it actually at our airport a week ago. And it came up again, like that runway is, they do a 0 to 100 scale. I think there's portions of our runway that's at 30, and I think under 30 is considered failing. And so from the engineer's point of view, we've got about a year or two before that runway would be considered failed. We're having conversations with airport ops and the FAA about, well, who ultimately makes that call? When do we actually need to close it for safety reasons? If you talk to some airport or some pilots, they'd say, oh, it's totally fine. It's a little bumpy. That's what I heard from one. It's a little bumpy. I know it's very difficult to plow, so it's going to become more and more difficult to remain open in the winter at least. But I expect this to be a conversation some people want to have with our new director. And we also have to have a conversation with the FAA on what it looks like to decommission that runway ultimately. This goes into the details of what that study included and potentially looking at, what it would look like if that land was able to be used for other purposes. Any questions on that one? A project I'm personally excited about is the Part 150 study. This was a request of some U.S. House of Representative members from local, along with many community members. And it's also, I just think it's a great study for the airport and its community to understand where the noise impacts truly are and what remedies truly exist in terms of mitigating those noise impacts. So where we are on that one is we have identified or selected a consultant, and we are working with that consultant to develop a scope of work that is approved by the FAA, and then hopefully we're underway with that study later this year. We have to have an approved scope of work and then a grant application with the FAA. So ultimately, the first kind of phase of that study is noise models, a noise model. So if you go to Centennial's Airport and Google airport noise study or Part 150, you'll see their noise model right now. So they developed the noise contours to identify the noise impacts. And then the second part of that process is a noise compatibility plan. And that's where us, other airport stakeholders would say, we want you to think about doing this, doing that. And the FAA will respond about what they would approve and would not approve.
Before you go off Part 150, I think for the public to know and our board to know, what is that engagement? What can people expect and how can they expect their voice to be heard throughout the Part 150 study?
Great question. So we're working through the scope right now, and one part of that scope is the community engagement. And the Part 150 is fairly prescriptive from the FAA's point of view. but it will include a technical advisory committee that meets a number of times with the consultant and weighs in on the noise model, weighs in on the recommendations that go into the noise compatibility plan. There are also public hearings. So that'll be an opportunity for the broader public to get engaged. We have also built in the scope regular check-ins with the Airport Advisory Board, because we think you are an important stakeholder to that process, and as well as a couple check-ins with the Jeffco Board of County Commissioners. So that was our attempt to go above and beyond the normal prescriptive process, and hopefully the FAA signs off on that. We'll see. So those are kind of the current plans and studies the airport's undertaking. I do like to touch on private development, because I know that's a frequent question about what's happening out here. And one way we have used to guide what we think of in terms of private development was first the development of a growth framework that was developed by the Airport Advisory Board. And then we had a consultant develop a strategic business plan where he took that growth framework and fleshed it out more into a conceptual plan and also some other guiding documents and a development matrix that helps the airport prioritize what type of land use or what type of aeronautical use we'd like to see over here. Going back to those sponsor assurances, there is a little bit of a difficulty of saying, well, we only want this, right? If the market is not telling us, is not indicating they have any interest in only manufacturing, we have to be open to other uses. But it is our attempt to kind of decide what makes sense up front, what makes sense further back in terms of that south development area. And so we use this as just one tool. We also use guidance from the Jeffco Board of County Commissioners and other tools to work with how we develop this area. But where it sits right now is we're open to letters of intent for the south development area. Those, any development over there has to comply with the overall development plan, which is the zoning for the airport. And those essentially say we're approved for airport uses. It's not very limited in terms of what type. That's more in terms of us to decide. So one example that went through the process most recently was Shelter, which is actually in permitting for their last hangar on their ground lease. And so they essentially signed their first ground lease with the airport, I think it was in 2019 or 2018, and have been building out their leasehold ever since.
Can you back up to that last slide, Ben?
Sure.
What's the significance of that grayed area, or is that just your graphic?
That is just me pasting the Shelter concept plan onto our master plan. So you can see.
Right answer.
The building in the blank slate that was there.
Okay.
So then, all the thoughts go to the south side of the field. What we know so far is that we have that taxiway that is part of that AIP project. We also have a ground lease that was approved with the Board of County Commissioners. It was the ground lease is with BJC Investment Group. Their ground lease was actually signed or approved by the board about a week or 2 weeks ago. I believe their intent is to look at a fixed base operation or a MRO or maintenance repair operation. But the reality is they're developers. They are going to go into their due diligence phase. They have 9 months of due diligence. They will see what they can, sell in terms of the market demand. And then they have 9 months to decide whether they're gonna go through with actual development. And then the only other spoken for land on the south side right now is that Pilatus right of first refusal. And we'd love to have another investment from Pilatus. I understand they're kind of tightly constrained over there in Switzerland. They're such a great model in terms of an airport land use that provides great ground lease revenue, provides jobs for the community, and doesn't generate a lot of noise impacts. One other item I wanted to touch on, unleaded fuel. We continue to learn on this process. Many of you have seen this slide, but just as a reminder, approximately 10% of the fuel sold on this airport is 100 low lead. And that's because a vast majority of the piston aircraft on this field are only certified to run on 100 low lead. And just for the record, we do not sell fuel directly. It's sold by one of the two fixed base operations on the field. But the good news there is there's steps underway to transition to unleaded across the entire fleet in the United States. We believe there is now a development of a safe alternative, in fact, a couple of different alternatives. So we have approval and an individual pilot, should their aircraft qualify, can go get a supplemental type certificate to run either SWIFT 94 UL or GAMI 100 UL. So that's one part of it. Then the other part of it is just developing out the distribution network. If you were to go try and buy SWIFT 94 UL right now, you can buy it at Centennial. They're currently subsidizing it down to the cost of 100 low lead. I think it's a $2 cost per difference, $2 per gallon difference. As the production of 94 UL or a 100 UL product scales up, we're expecting that subsidy to shrink. So what we're doing here on the field, we purchased a truck that we think we can use for an unleaded product. Where the route we have decided to go currently is we are developing a statement of qualifications for a design firm to essentially design a new tank to go in our bulk fuel facility. The reason we have to go this route is because we are eligible for an FAA grant and a state grant to fund the installation of a new tank. So we have to go through a selection process for a design firm. They design it, and then we have to go and bid it out for installation. So that's the process we're going through currently. I think the other exciting part of this is due to that new state bill, we expect to begin receiving a grant from CDOT Aeronautics to actually subsidize the price difference between unleaded and low lead beginning in 2025. So that if that comes to fruition, that helps solve a big piece of the puzzle for the airport, because if we want this fuel to actually be used, we understand it needs to be price competitive with 100 low lead, and someone needs to shrink that cost. So hopefully that'll help us get there. I think this is the last one I have for you. I want to touch on community engagement. We probably all know the Community Noise Roundtable voted to disband earlier this year. Jefferson County was disappointed in that. We believed it was a good venue and also the FAA's recommended venue to discuss noise impacts. I understand some of the frustrations around the roundtable. But we'll begin looking for other venues to have those same sorts of discussions. Certainly some of that discussion is held here, but there's discussions that need to be kind of ongoing and held with pilots and other stakeholders. I know there's interest in forming another kind of what we used to call the Airport Noise Task Force, which was essentially whatever pilots on the field wanted to be involved, flight schools, and the FAA, if we can get them involved, to discuss ideas, just ideas like Trustee Serbu brought up, or any ideas that can be brought forward that are worth considering to lessen the noise impacts. So we're working on that. We know it's a high priority. We don't have the answers now, other than we know it's going to be a big part of our new director's job when Eric starts, even beginning next week. Any questions there? All right, that's all I've got. This was, I would say, end this with, this was kind of a scatter shot of topics, because I think some of this is the question of what do you guys all want to be discussing down the road and in future months. So this is a little bit of teaser of some of the topics. And like I mentioned, there's other topics as well. And, it's a conversation to be had also with Eric Dahl when he starts. But I welcome all of your input in terms of what you want to see or what's happening with current projects.
So one thing I'll add on that we didn't touch on there is that the airport is directly associated with the county, but it is an enterprise of the county. And really the only delineation there is that the airport has to be self-sustaining. It has to have revenue. It doesn't get to pull from general funds or any of the taxes that come into the county. It has to create its own sources of revenue. Those have to be the expense side. So although it is firmly locked in, the term is an enterprise of the county. So there is that kind of degree of separation. It's always something to be mindful of. We only get to play with the money that we create.
Yeah.
There's no other pool to kind of pull from.
Yeah, and I think we gave a financial update maybe July or August to this board last time, and I think that's always a good presentation to have at least once a year to kind of track how we're doing on that front.
Lots of information, questions from the board.
What's the communication path with the county commissioners? Are there regular meetings with them, or if things come up, does it kind of go through you guys, or how's that?
Yeah, so good question. We always encourage them to join, like Commissioner Kraft Tharp has virtually tonight. We give around twice a year. I've gone in as chair and vice chair to update the Board of County Commissioners in one of their briefings. Our county commission does meet weekly. And so twice a year, we as the board go in and do updates. It's usually just the chair and vice chair. We invite any of to come and join us on that. You kind of have to be patient because you'll get there at 8:30 or 9. You may not present till noon. But and then the airport staff, I'll let you speak to that. You all do far more regular reports and briefings.
Yeah, I mean, some of the big ones is just when it's our turn to update on budget for the next year. And then usually we're going before the Board of County Commissioners anytime we're asking for approval of a CIP project or a ground lease or a host of other items. But usually conversations there are restricted to that item. So it's more limited in terms of a general discussion on the airport issues.
Could I ask one more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely on a different topic. To what extent have air traffic controllers, and I don't mean the FAA, I mean actual controllers, been involved in the noise discussion?
We'll defer that with the band.
Greg, feel free to chime in as well. The FAA, going back to that community noise roundtable, it's possible to have a conversation with the tower manager, for example, or one of the controllers there. And they will give you their opinion, but it is strictly their opinion, and they're not going to change any way they do anything from that individual take. They will always say, if you want to see like procedures actually change, one, they'd love it to go run through like a community noise roundtable and to be endorsed by a group like that. So it's, if there's any potential impacts that involve, trade-offs, that you have kind of a community sign off. And then there's still just this long process through the FAA anytime they're studying any potential procedure change. That's not voluntary. Voluntary is a different matter. And I think we found them to be helpful in terms of voluntary discussions. I think that Part 150 is the next best avenue to have real conversations with the FAA on potential changes, because it's their process we're going through that they are funding.
We have the tower, people come over to our flight school meetings and they present, what they see problems with, where they see improvements, what they can do and things like that. So it really helps us as far as the flight school is concerned, but their hands are really tied. They can't change anything unless the FAA, their superiors say, we're going to try this or do something. They've started to change the patterns because the two runways are close together. So turning belly to belly, and they're working with different ideas and programs with that. But they're, like I said, their hands are totally tied. They can't do anything unless the FAA tells them they can do it.
So do we still have Eric on the Zoom meeting, or did he drop off?
He's here.
Hey, Eric, this is Jim Wood. I have a question for you. Do you have a rough idea on what your, maybe 30 days is awfully aggressive, but either your first 30 days or first 60 days of kind of the first priorities that you're intending to tackle?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this off and on about like what does that really look like? I know that the initial period of time is really kind of going around and meeting everybody, trying to get the lay of the land, talking about different departments, talking to different tenants, talking to different community engagement members, trying to figure out, what their thoughts are, what their kind of goals are, what their perspectives of the airport are. And really about collating that information and trying to figure out, with Ben and Brandon and with Avel and Stephanie and the rest of the county leadership, trying to figure out the best way to do that community engagement piece, because this really is a community engagement issue where we need to have that open and honest communication with the community. So there's been talk about how to do that. I don't know if that's really applicable for the venue right today, but certainly it's been an ongoing discussion between Ben and I and the county about how best we can get that done in 30, 60, or 100 days, and what that timeline really looks like. I'm sure we'll talk to you in the future about what that looks like, but for now, we're certainly discussing it even now about how to do it the best way we can.
Okay, thanks.
And so maybe one point to that, because there's a lot of things in work that, um, we had lots of conversation on, there was lots of varying opinions. I think in our conversations, we were putting a pin in a lot of that. We want to give Eric time to catch up and have conversations, because there was nothing that was so urgent. You know, when we talk about some of the crosswinds, we talk about some of the projects and opportunities, so that there's a catch-up time, understanding time, having those conversations, and then we can all come back to the table around here and reevaluate some of that work that was done by the previous board. Some of it may stay the same, some of it may change drastically. I think that's part of what this board is able to do, is to be agile and adjust based on that. So,
Well, that was really the genesis of my question, is
Okay.
because I think that, I mean, the elephant in the room is the airport in the last couple of years has really kind of been mired in a significant level of distrust with several different entities, and I think it'd be wise to, I don't say we go back to square one on every single decision made since 1971, but we revisit some of these items and make sure that we made intelligent decisions, or if we need to change course, we change course. That was really the crux of my question. So thanks, Jensen, for that.
And I was curious, the noise study, the 150, is that a 2-year project? Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
and audience, I'm gonna open up for questions for y'all in just a minute. I want to make sure I get everyone around the table first, and then we'll open up some more. New board members, existing, ones that have been with us 7 months that are senior. All right, I'll turn it over to the audience for a couple questions. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the crosswind runway. You folks received a bid or from your study, what it would cost to fix that runway? What was that number, that money number?
I haven't seen that. Mike Johnson told me that he gave a bid price to Paul Angelo, but I don't know if it's apples to apples with what we'd be required to construct it as. So I think that's further conversation warranted on that.
You don't know the number?
Not the number of whatever Mark Johnson quoted. I'd just be guessing.
Okay, you know where I'm going. It was 14 million, I believe. Mark Johnson was a contractor, built many hangars and all sorts of cement jobs. He said he could fix that for 3 million and it would last 10 years. And that was relayed to Corbo and Ansel, and nobody heard nothing about it. You know, all you want to do is, you know, tear it out of there so you can build buildings or whatever. We want it there for a safety reason. So anyway, I just wanted to make you folks give you what the real skinny is, so.
And I think we're all on the same page. There's been no decisions made on that runway, and we want to give ample time for Eric to come in, provide those evaluations, and definitely provide more opportunities for conversation on it. To me, I know that some of those presentations were made, but they were still in such their infancy, at least in my mind, that I think there's quite a bit of conversation still happening.
Okay.
Any other questions from the audience?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
So how soon is it gonna be when the new airport manager comes that the public gets to have a meet and greet?
It's a good question. There we did, this was a virtual one. So Eric, we'll put a pin in that. We'll find out when he's on the ground. But we'll make sure that we have some opportunities to welcome in a great public way. I don't know that there's one scheduled or planned, but
I will say there is an intent to have that, but we don't have it on the calendar yet.
It needs to be sooner than later.
it's also summer. I was kind of laughing, and our next item is confirming the next meeting date. So that may be as early as it comes as the next meeting date, but duly noted. And we definitely, and I know Eric's willing and excited to get out and get to know all of us, which are now become his neighbors. Any other questions or comments before I move on to the next? All right, the last item on our agenda is confirm the next meeting date. By our calendar, that would be July 10th. As long as we've got quorum for that, we will hold and keep that meeting for July 10th, 5 p.m. No immediate conflicts with that?
I won't be able to make that. I'll be out of the country, but don't hold it up for me.
Good with
I
that?
think we're good with that.
Good. Phenomenal. All right, before I call for a motion to adjourn, any last comments? We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There's never any opposed to that. All right, we are adjourned 5:55. Thanks for everyone that joined us online.